I see that we have a quorum, and I thank you for your attendance after the votes. Colleagues, our first hour is devoted to our witness, Laurie Ogilvie, and I'm anticipating doing some work with the committee on the second hour. I take note that there's 3 motions that are potentially debatable today. If you could, before you introduce your motion, I'd ask you to do the courtesy to the clerk and to the chair by waiting until the clerk and the chair advise you as to what is on the agenda currently with the committee, so that when we have a debate about the motions, if we have debate about the motions, at least be informed by what our commitments are at this point. And also our opportunities are at this point. So if you could do that as a courtesy, the clerk works very hard to try and get us all together. And I just want to offer an apology, which might even be sincere, that so unlike me, that's right. As you know, I hate to cancel meetings, but I've had to cancel 2 in a row. The last one was we had witnesses lined up on Thursday afternoon, and by Friday afternoon we didn't. So we had no ability to replace the witnesses. And the one before that, I think, was votes, wasn't it?
That's right.
We ran out of time on the votes, so that went sideways as well. So all of which is to say that you know we're starting to run out of runway already in this committee. So in the context of not only the outstanding motions, but also the opportunities and scheduling issues we have, I'll ask you for the courtesy of sharing with you what we have at this point. So in the meanwhile, we'll turn to our witness, Ms. Ogilvie, and appreciate your patience and your attendance as well. I'm sure the clerk has briefed you on 5 minutes of presentation, and then after that, members will ask questions. So look forward to what you have to say. Please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon. My name is Laurie Ogilvie, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Military Family Services. Thank you for this invitation back to address this committee. As I've mentioned in previous appearances, Military Family Services is an operational division of Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services. We contribute to the well-being of Canadian Armed Forces community directly through the Military Family Services Program, the Veteran Family Program, and support our troops. Family-centric programs and services are delivered directly by Military Family Services or through not-for-profit provincially incorporated charitable non-defense organizations, namely Military Family Resource Centers. In addressing the topic for today around housing and relocation, I can only speak to the relocation supports that are provided through the Military Family Services Program. While Canadian research findings suggest the majority of military families are supported and resilient within a healthy Canadian Armed Forces community, relocation is a challenge faced by military families more than most Canadians. It is estimated that around 10,000 families relocate every year, and the average posting duration is about 3 to 5 years. We have analyzed extensive research into issues facing military families, and these include frequent absences of the Canadian Armed Forces member, transitions through the military journey, and of course, why I'm here today, relocations. In 2020, the Military Family Services Program was modernized to reflect a more contemporary understanding of the composition of families and their needs. In doing so, emphasis was placed on going beyond the 3 known military lifestyle challenges to include 3 familial or personal challenges, namely mental wellness, financial health, and interpersonal connection. When a Canadian Armed Forces member relocates, families can be impacted financially and often feel disconnected from their established social support networks. Today, we deliver programming for military families in the areas of relocation preparedness, financial resilience, personal and family health, and community involvement. To do so, we engage with and steward Military Family Resource Centres in Canada for the delivery of the Military Family Services Program, including service outlets in Europe, the United States, rest of the world, tailored programming for our special operations families, and a virtual Military Family Resource Centre. Some programming examples include emergency family care assistance, mental health counseling in person and virtually, family and intimate partner violence support, a 24/7 crisis and referral line, emergency grants and loans, telemedicine, children and youth mental health counseling, augmented educational supports and counseling, employment initiatives, extended outreach to remote families, and non-clinical psychosocial supports. Beyond direct delivery, Military Family Services engages with national stakeholders to expand our capacity to access to services to enhance family resilience throughout relocation. These include a spousal employment network, virtual career fairs, and the recently released Career Coach Plus, healthcare provided virtually through Maple Telemedicine, a relocation family guide, which is a consolidation of an information package to prepare families for relocation, the Military Family Doctor Network through Calian, a dedicated crisis text service with Kids Help Phone, and Support Our Troops summer camp and scholarship programs. Although a number of initiatives have been put in place over the past few years to provide more robust support to military families, the reality is that several of the most significant challenges military families face as a result of frequent relocations are beyond the control and jurisdiction of the Department of National Defense and the government and the federal government. For example, the transferability of professional credentials, access to childcare and healthcare, and children's educational continuity, to name a few, remain of great concerns for military families when relocating. My organization works closely with Seamless Canada to raise awareness of the provinces and territories of the unique challenges military families face, especially when relocating. Families often need additional support accessing community and provincial systems of care to develop their resilience in order to manage the transition inherent with Canadian Armed Forces operational requirements. We work to leverage all resources, especially as they continually evolve and improve their innovative support programs. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the 6-minute round. Ms. Gallant, 6 minutes. Oh, Ms. Cramp-Newman. I'm looking at the wrong side.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Ogilvie, for being here today. I think it's no question that there are unique and intense challenges that our military families are facing. So I'll have a number of questions, and we'll try and get through them as expeditiously as we can in the nature of time. Have you been hearing from CAF members about the government's PLD, CFHD, PPLD changes to the housing benefit with regards to the post-living differential, et cetera? And how has this affected members, both those starting off in their careers and those in the middle to later stages of their careers?
So in my role, I do not hear from members around any of those items. What we have conducted in the past is research around military families, around the impact of relocation on the military families themselves, and those do not get raised to us during the research that we do with families.
Do you believe it's realistic for the government to expect that someone starting off in the CAF at 18, for example, making way less than $100,000 a year, is able to afford a house in Halifax or Esquimalt by the age of 25?
Again, that's outside of the scope of my responsibility. We do hear from families that during relocation there is a financial strain, especially around seeking and securing accommodations appropriate, and that does impact their interest or their ability to relocate. So the families will go on to a imposed restriction to offset.
Okay, thank you. Further to that, are you concerned about the abysmal lack of upfront funding that has been shared for this program, with only $7 million going into CAF housing over the next 5 years and zero funding over the next 2 years? I'm trying to figure out how struggling CAF members can afford to wait 5 years before there's meaningful action on housing.
Again, outside of the scope of my responsibility, as housing does not fall anywhere in my portfolio.
Okay, you did touch on this. You did touch on this in your opening remarks, and we've heard numerous times at this committee that one of the biggest quality of life issues facing our troops, especially when they move from area to area, is access to medical care. For example, getting a doctor, and unfortunately, this was very much absent in the DPU. Can you speak to what steps can be taken to ensure that troops moving across provincial boundaries can get timely access to medical care?
So I cannot speak to military members accessing healthcare. I can speak to families accessing healthcare during relocation, which is why we introduced the telemedicine service for relocating military families. We've had over the past in last year there was over 7,300 patients that access the telemedicine. So that is providing a level of support so military families can reestablish or establish healthcare when they move to a new community.
Excellent, thank you. And additionally, one thing that the DPU did mention was access to childcare. You mentioned this in your opening remarks as well. Do you have any concerns that access to childcare may fall victim to the same issue facing interprovincially relocated troops that are currently experiencing with medical care? And what can we do to avoid these same mistakes from happening again?
As I mentioned in my remarks, there is a number of concerns or a number of situations that face military families because of going through different provincial jurisdictions that are outside of the scope of a Department of National Defense and outside of the scope of the federal government. What we try to do in Military Family Services is put programs in place to be able to support the families within the communities that they're moving to. For example, with childcare, we work closely with the Military Family Resource Centers, who do provide in some communities childcare for military families. As well, we provide support. So we have a product called Emergency Family Care Assistance, where a family, if they are in need of child care, they can come to us and we will provide either support or we'll provide funding to offset an emergency that they may be having around child care.
Perfect. Next, do you track or are you able to estimate approximately how many CAF members or their families have used food banks in the last year?
No, I do not have any of that information. I'm sorry.
No, that's a staggering number. We're hearing it every day. There's different reports and different testimonies of people accessing and needing to use food banks, not just military members themselves, but their families, and it's extraordinarily disturbing. Next, aside from digitizing medical records, what other steps can be taken to improve the quality, efficacy, and efficiency of medical care being delivered to our troops and their families?
Again, I can't speak to medical care access or provision to military members. Family members are receiving their medical care in the provincial system of care, so we don't have any, again, jurisdiction over the medical care provided to families in the provincial system. What we try to do is provide those bridges for families as they're relocating to new jurisdictions to access services.
Okay, thank you. Could you speak to how the lack of CAF members and families is administered related trades is affecting its ability for the CAF to effectively administer and deliver program under bodies such as yours? Because I recognize that the military families, you do a tremendous amount of work, and obviously we're grateful for that. But if you could speak to that, that'd be appreciated.
Again, I can't speak to the lack of Canadian Armed Forces members. What I can speak to is the engagement with military families as they're moving across the country and the supports that we're providing and what we're hearing back from them on what their needs are and our continued evolution of the programming to support what the modern military family looks like versus what the military family looked like 25 years ago.
Yeah, and it certainly has changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nyman. Mr. Collins, 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ms. Ogilvie, for attending today. Brigadier General Tattersall was here, and she talked about the challenges that members face in terms of relocating and some of the stresses that it places on members and their families. And so it's not just an issue of availability and affordability of housing, but there are all other kinds of spinning plates, so to speak, that follow our members in terms of what they do with their personal vehicle, what are they doing in terms of selling their house. And so there's the housing checklist that you referenced there, which I was very impressed with that in terms of trying to assist members. But we're looking for recommendations here today in terms of how to improve the situation. How do we make that process less stressful for our members in terms of it's not just about budgets, it's about policies, it's about finding partners to help in that process? Can you provide recommendations in that regard in terms of how we make it less stressful?
Absolutely. So 2 years ago, we introduced a family relocation guide, and so in that guide is a very comprehensive compilation of all the steps that family members can take during relocation, even to the point of when you're moving or if you're a pet or whatever it happens to be. So what we worked with military families that have experienced relocation, and we went through what were your stress points, what would you have preferred to have in when you were relocating. So we continually, that's a living document. It continually evolves as policies change or as more services come available.
Great. You mentioned childcare services. It's a challenge for everyone across the country. It's one of the reasons why we implemented a program for $10 a day daycare. And you mentioned and you highlighted the fact that it's not a government service. It's one that's provided by the nonprofit and for-profit sector, but largely administered through the provincial governments. And so kind of at an arm's length situation for us from a government perspective. Can I ask in terms of the importance of getting to that point where we build capacity, where the provincial government builds capacity in that sector, and there are no wait lists, and there's the ability to walk into a door in whatever region that you happen to be in the country, and to be assured that when you need that service, it's there for you?
Absolutely. So that is the work we're doing with Seamless Canada. So meet twice a year with Seamless Canada, and there's 3 main topics. One is employment, one is education, and under education is access to childcare. And so we have been meeting frequently with them on the topic of childcare and around how provinces and territories can work with the Canadian Armed Forces to better access, to increase more access for military families, especially when they're newly relocating to a community.
Thanks for that. Something I'm dealing with at another committee is dealing with the provincial government. Some are more committed to that plan than others. Can I ask what the wait list is, the average wait list for members in terms of trying to secure, and I know it'd be different in different parts of the country, but you know, you do have a housing wait list, and we know the numbers there from previous testimony. Do you have any information to share in terms of how long families would wait to secure a childcare spot?
I do. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me right now, so I'm happy to provide it after. We have just concluded basically, it's called a community profile, so we've gone to every community where Canadian Armed Forces are larger groups of Canadian Armed Forces members and their families are located, and we've assessed what the actual usage is, what the intent is, or what the delta is, and then what is not only available through the military family resource centers, but was also is available through the community.
That's great. I'll switch gears to the relocation process at Brookfield, and so we've heard some previous testimony in terms of how that process works, and we had a representative here, if memory serves me right, from the company, and I asked the question in terms of do you undertake client satisfaction surveys after the move, and their answer was no. And so do you feel that would be useful in terms of gauging the success of that service that we offer to members and their families? And do you have any recommendations around how we can improve the services that they provide to members, knowing that it can be a bit of a touchy subject with those who've utilized it? So
we conduct, I can't speak on behalf of Brookfield, but what I can say is that the relocation study that we conducted in 2018, we had almost 700 respondents to that survey, and through that survey we were able to develop the relocation guide. So I find that the work that we do, and I can only speak on behalf of my organization, is that getting the feedback from the actual users to then improve the services going forward is an incredibly helpful step.
Okay. Mr. Chair, one more minute. Well, can I ask about recommendations then for Brookfield? If they're back in front of us on another study, is there something that we should be pressing them on in terms of improving their service? I mean, we are purchasing those services. They're a private entity. They're not part of the government. And so can I ask you for recommendations in that regard?
I'd feel uncomfortable providing recommendations on behalf of another service provider.
Okay.
Sorry.
Last question, I guess, would be the supports that are provided by others outside of the government in terms of our members. It's a broad network. You mentioned Support Our Troops as a for instance. Are there others that that provide assistance, and can you talk about their value in terms of assisting members?
Absolutely. So we work very, very closely with True Patriot Love, and the provision of the supports that they provide through their avenues. I also oversee Support Our Troops. So we try to connect with as many organizations that we possibly can to be able to expand the network of support for military families, military and veteran families.
Thanks, Ms. Ogilvie.
Madame Nomdine, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Ogilvie, for your attendance here. I understand that it's not really up to you whether a military service member needs to move or be relocated or not, but what does it mean for you if there were to be a drop in the number or the frequencies of these moves? To what extent would it give you a bit of breathing room? To what extent would it mean it would have a positive effect on you in terms of the services required when CAF members have to be relocated?
I understood, and if I missed something, please let me know. And I'm going to reference back to the relocation study that we did with military families. And what military families told us during that relocation survey was that the longer time that they are in a particular community, the more they can establish those networks of care that are required, and the more that they can build equity in products. So I can't speak on behalf of the Canadian Forces. I can't speak on behalf of the duration of postings or the frequency of postings, but what I can say is what military families have told us, and again, this is one study, but what military families have told us is that the longer you can be in a community, the better, because it's about establishing. So I can give one example, if that's okay, and that's around access to childcare. So that has the length of time on a wait list. Quite often, families will get to a community, put their name on the wait list for childcare access, and actually leave the community before they've been provided access.
Merci.
Thank you. Can you tell me whether your organization or the Resource Center has, the CFMWS, has looked at the rates of unemployment of spouses, access to medical doctors, how many members of the family have access to a doctor or not? To what extent has the service provided or compiled that data?
So we collect the data. So the way that we work with the Military Family Resource Centers is we ask for, we've put in place metrics for them to provide information back. So they feed that back to us. We do it in a variety of different ways. So we also conduct community needs assessments. So understanding what the community needs are. We conduct with the MFRCs, we ask for them to provide us where their biggest issue places are so that we can adjust funding based on what their particular needs are. So, for example, in some communities, access to funding to support medical travel to a particular, if it's a very far distance from where the family is located, then we'll provide it to that community, whereas other communities, if that's not an issue, then that funding won't be provided for there. So it's a matter of really looking at the unique characteristics of each community and then adjusting how we're providing the support to each community.
Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais vous
Thank you very much. I understand that it's difficult to access doctors or childcare, but sometimes accessing a school in a family's mother tongue is also an issue. I'd like to hear about what's going on outside of Quebec. Do you get any complaints? Perhaps even complaints that might have been launched with the Ombudsman or that you're aware of. For Francophone children, parents outside of Quebec say it's just so difficult to find a French language school. Let's just send the kids to English school. Is that something you hear? And do you have any stats on that?
So absolutely, it's what we hear. So about a year and a half ago, we stood up an education cell within Military Family Services, and so that education cell, we have guidance counselors who provide navigation support for families as they're transitioning from community to community, and so especially for children where it's finding access to schooling in their primary language. We also provide tutoring support for military children, especially around language training. And then we have access to second language training through our Military Family Services program as well. So that's through For the Love of English, Love of French, and Rosetta Stone. So families have access. But what we're finding most is that it's been Francophone families who are moving to predominantly Anglophone communities and vice versa, is our guidance counselors will provide the navigational support to the families so that they can find the schools that best suit with what their needs are.
J'ai peu de temps pour ma prochaine.
I don't have much time for my next question, but I'll try. You were referring to some of the limits that are set in. But in my region, the amount that is given to CAF members has reduced. Is this something that you're hearing as well? Does that mean more pressure on these families who also have mortgages to pay? Does that mean that they end up finding housing that's not well adapted to their needs? Is that something you've heard in terms of those amounts that have lessened?
No, in my role. I don't hear that. But what I do hear is around the impact on the financial impact on the military families themselves. But that's a very layered. Conversation, because it has to do more so with cost of housing, and then it's spousal employment. So it truly is about the family member giving up employment as they're moving across the country, which is why we introduced the Military Family Spousal Network a few years ago, to be able to help spouses be able to have a bit more of a continuity of employment to offset what those financial impacts are.
Merci, Madame Normandine. 6 minutes. Ms. Matson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this study was started, reopened after we heard quite a lot of disturbing things coming out of Halifax. Current CAF members experiencing homelessness. Of course, this has moved us all, and we're very concerned. My bloc colleague and I, we wrote a joint letter to the minister expressing those concerns. From MFRC's area in the CAF, have you heard much about members experiencing homelessness or housing precarity in that regard, specifically around Halifax?
So I did check with all of the MFRCs, and none of the MFRCs that are reporting back to me have heard about any families that are, and when I say permanently homeless, quite often the homelessness is during a relocation or a posting, and families are choosing to live in a trailer for a couple of months waiting for their house to become available. Those are the only ones that we're hearing about. Now, where families are in any kind of financial distress, then they come to support our troops, and then we're able to provide loans or grants to those families experience, perhaps because of a relocation, if there's a loss in sale of their home or whatever it happens to be, then we endeavor as much as possible to offset that, and in whatever but based on the individual situation that the family's in right there. So no, I haven't heard any homeless families whatsoever, but it would be the choice of the family to choose to, for example, live in a trailer for a month while they're waiting for the house to become available.
Okay. Obviously, a lot goes into the well-being of a family, well-being of a CAF member. Just around this table, we've talked about healthcare, childcare, education. One of the things that for the services that are provided for military families and members on base is around fitness training, the facilities on base. Can you tell us about the importance of those fitness trainers on base, training our troops, ensuring that they're mission ready, training of special forces, and them staying in good health is part of that overall benefit?
That, again, is outside of what the scope of my responsibility is. My focus is really on supporting military and veteran families, so I don't have any kind of line of sight into to the fitness instructors. I know they're part of our organization, but I don't have any oversight responsibility, so I really can't comment on that right now.
Okay. One of my concerns around this is, of course, that in terms of, and you spoke to it yourself as well, that support, that spousal network, the support for military family members to work on base, and the importance of that as they may deal with problems with employment and movement. However, why I bring up fitness trainers is because they are often paid 37 to 63% less than fitness trainers performing similar duties to, say, the RCMP, who provides a very, very similar service. So I wanted to know what the justification for CFMWS was to pay significantly less to those fitness trainers.
And again, I can't answer that because I'm not part of the compensation decisions within my organization.
Have you heard that that's causing issues, however?
I've heard that it's causing issues, but I'm not part of any of the discussions related to compensation.
Okay, and how have you heard that greatly impacts families, the family members of CAF members and CAF members themselves?
The fitness instructors?
The not being paid fair wages.
I don't have, so within my portfolio, because we work with the Military Family Resource Centers for the delivery of all the services to military families, and the MFRCs as a separate employer for staff of the non-public funds, I don't have any kind of responsibility or oversight into the support for the wages for military families. I know 14% of our workforce is military spouses. I do not receive any information or any feedback on what the rate of pay is. What we do is we work very closely within the military spousal employment network to help military family members receive or link to employment that would provide more opportunity for higher wages or for career advancement. And so, like just yesterday and today, we hosted virtual career fairs where we had hundreds of military families attend, or military spouses attend, seeking employment with the employers that were there. CFMWS is always one of the employers at those virtual career fairs as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is certainly important. However, the fact that, and I'm glad that you referenced the non-public fund workers, they have been on strike for 3 months, demanding exactly that increase in wages, fair treatment at the bargaining table. And in fact, on March 26th, my bloc colleague and I, we sent a joint letter to the Minister of National Defence expressing that solidarity with non-public fund workers. And I have moved a motion in this committee on that, which I would like to call for today. And I don't know if I have to read it back into the record again, Mr. Chair. I'm quite happy to do so.
That's why I gave the caution at the beginning of the meeting, which was if we could do this as an orderly fashion, yours plus 3 other motions are properly before the committee. Mm-hmm. And I don't need, my view is that we should be respectful of the witness, mm-hmm. and then because her time is quite precious, and we should fulfill one more round of questions, and then we'll go to motions, because I think all the motions before us are important motions.
Well, I think that it's within order, so I would like to move that motion.
You can move it. I'm just talking in terms of orderliness and respect for colleagues and respect for witnesses. But yeah, it's
well, and I have waited there. It was supposed to happen a couple meetings ago, so respectfully, those workers have been waiting quite a long time.
Efficiently, I'll be very interested in that.
Well, I do hope so, and I know that many of us around this table are very supportive. So I would like to move my motion for the CFMWS workers.
There's nothing I can do to stop you moving your motion. It's been tabled, and it's in order. So, yes, Madame Lalonde.
With all due respect, Mr. Chair, is there a way that we could just read the motion, just to be on record, to make sure we agree on the language?
But if you read it, then I'd have to open it up for debate. Yeah.
It's the same.
So read it into the record, and we'll go.
I just don't want to waste it. No.
She's just moved the motion, so it's...
Yeah, but I think for the purposes of public understanding, from my understanding, we should at least have it read into the record so that we hear
Again?
it.
Okay. Okay. that given that 40% of Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services workers are members of the military family, given that the treatment of military families is a matter of national security, given that the CFMWS workers in Kingston, Petawawa, Ottawa, Valcartier, Montreal, Saint Jean, and Bagotville passed a 94% strike action mandate for fair wages, an equitable pay scale, and good security jobs, given that these workers have been on strike since January 15th and the employer has refused to return to the negotiation table with a fair offer, and given that CFMWS has chosen to invest in replacement labor, private security officers, and third-party negotiation consultants instead of providing a fair offer, the committee expressed its solidarity with the UNDE's non-public funds workers on strike and call on the employer to bargain in good faith.
I saw Mr. Kelly's hand first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I?
Yep.
I've got a slight amendment that I'd like to make, and I believe staff have. Okay, we do have copies we can circulate. So I'd move an amendment to read as follows. So the motion will read that given that, and then I would insert the words, civilian military workers are a critical force multiplier that supports our brave men and women in uniform. So I would insert those words. 40% of the Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services, CFMWS workers, are members of the military family. I won't read the rest of it, but then at the end, I have another insertion. In the final phrase where it says the committee express its solidarity with the UNDE's non-public funds workers on strike and call on, delete the word employer and substitute Minister of Defense to, and insert, come to the table, bring an end to this strike, and then leave the words bargain in good faith and add the words with our civilian military workers.
Okay, that's the motion is in order. The debate, any other debate? Ms. Lalonde.
Actually, I would like just to ask for suspension, just to actually read and discuss with my colleague.
We want to suspend? All right. So we'll suspend for 2 minutes? Okay. Going here. I don't like to see witnesses abused. So, Madame Lambropoulos, I have you as our first speaker.
Well, it wasn't going to be on the amendment, so.
All right, okay. Any debate? Any further debate? Ms. Masson?
So I have a couple of concerns here. I'm fine with the First Amendment, like the first part of the amendment. My concern with the second part of and call on and taking out the employer, the non-public fund workers are in a bit of an interesting situation where the employer isn't necessarily directly the minister, but the minister does direct the employer. So if there's a way to reword that so that it's within order to say, all right, committee express solidarity with UND on strike and call on the Minister of National Defense to instruct the employer to bring an end to the strike, then that would be more appropriate, because ultimately it involves the minister, and it continues to involve, as it should, because there's a responsibility there, but it's directing, as also the minister should, on the employer, who is that direct negotiator.
Okay. So that's an amendment on the amendment.
Why don't we just vote down the amendment and vote for your motion?
Okay. Ms. Lalonde, are you wanting to speak?
Okay. Mr. Chair, I was wondering if we could, like I say, for me to argue or to debate languages for a long time, and our wonderful witness was here. Finally, we had a witness to this table that we could all listen to her recommendation on something that my understanding was very important also, which is the housing study that we're trying to push forward. I'm just wondering how comfortable. I'm aware, and I think every member here, when they ask a question in the House, the minister did mention that he had spoke with both sides. So is there a way that we could, we call on both sides to come to the table? So we're not singling a minister, or so we're just sort of generalizing, call on both sides. Is there a way that we could do this?
And I don't see a lot of will here. So there's the motion, there's the amendment, and there's an amendment to the amendment, and there's nothing else at this point. Is there any other debate? Seeing none, the first vote is on the sub-amendment, which is Minister of National Defense to instruct the employer. Have I got that correct? Yep. Okay. Minister of National Defense to instruct the employer. Okay, ready for the vote? Mm-hmm. We'll just do a hand vote? Yeah. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion, sub-amendment passes. Now we're on the amendment as amended. Okay? So do I need to read into the record the amendment as amended, or does everybody understand what we're voting on? I'm seeing heads sort of nodding.
No.
You don't understand?
I really would like clarification, and maybe we could just read the entire motion as the presented amendment, please.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, you can do it, or I can do it.
I'm happy to do it, Mr. Chair.
I think this is why you get the big money.
I think.
Yeah.
So,
It's
I think for the ease of everyone, I'm going to read the full motion with the amendments included, including the sub-amendment that we've just agreed to. So, the motion would read that, given that civilian military workers are a critical force multiplier that supports our brave men and women in uniform, 40% of Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services, CFMWS, workers are members of a military family. Given that the treatment of military families is a matter of national security, given that the CFMWS workers in Kingston, Petawawa, Ottawa, Valcartier, Montreal Saint-Jean, and Bagotville passed a 94% strike action mandate for fair wages, an equitable pay scale, and good security jobs, Given that these workers have been on strike since January 15th and the employer has refused to return to the negotiation table with a fair offer, and given that the CFMWS have chosen to invest in replacement labor, private security officers, and third-party negotiation consultants instead of providing a fair offer, the committee expresses its solidarity with the UNDE's non-public funds workers on strike and call on the Minister of National Defence to instruct the employer to come to the table, bring an end to this strike, and bargain in good faith with our civilian military workers.
Any debate?
Just
Mr. Fisher.
so, what about asking the Minister of National Defence to come to the table and encourage fair bargaining? I don't think that we want a situation where the minister says, "Solve this." No. No.
All right, Ms. Matheson?
So while I appreciate that, Ms. Lalonde actually said to not have the minister come to the table. This has the minister instructing the employer to come to the table to bargain fairly. So you're actually contradicting.
That's not the wording that I heard, though, to come to the table and work towards a fair bargaining agreement.
No,
it's to bring an end to the strike. To bargain in good faith and to encourage both sides to work towards that is, I think, language that I could live with, but I don't think that the wording as it sits right now is something that...
Okay. Any other debate? Okay, the vote. Mr. Fillmore.
I wonder, Ms. Matheson, beg your pardon. I wonder if Ms. Matheson could tell the fellow committee members in what way Mr. Kelly's amendments improve her intent, and we could just go through those one at a time, maybe, and understand why we're fussing around with this amendment.
So, Ms. Matheson, do you want to respond to that, or if there's anybody else?
So while I'm sure Mr. Kelly could talk about it himself, it's my belief that, yes, the employer is the direct negotiator, which was why I asked for that sub-amendment change. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the minister is responsible for those employees. And they fall under the minister's purview. So he is responsible, and I'm sure Mr. Kelly could add to that if he wishes.
So, do I still have the floor, Mr. Chair? Well, then, yeah, I'll switch to Mr. Kelly. For example, Mr. Kelly, in the very first, your first highlighted yellow section here, you've inserted civilian military workers, a long sentence there, where later in that same stanza, CFMWS are referenced. It just seems, well, it doesn't seem redundant, it is redundant. And maybe you could help us to understand what the intention of that particular part of your amendment is.
I think the amendments all pretty much speak for themselves, and I wasn't planning to debate this at length. I'm prepared to just allow this to go to a vote and let the chips fall where they may. If he doesn't like the amendment, he's welcome to vote against it, and we'll vote for it unamended. But the point is, just as Ms. Matheson had said, that the Minister of Defence is the ultimate person responsible and should be named in this motion, and that's why I had proposed that amendment. If he thinks that the first part of the amendment again is redundant, or if he doesn't agree with that portion of the sentence, he's also welcome to vote against it on that basis. But that's the reason why we added. We believe that civilian military workers are a critical force multiplier and should be recognized in this motion. And we think that the Minister of Defence is ultimately responsible for this, for the fact that we have this this dispute and his failure to solve it in the time that's already passed.
Any other commentary? Mr. Fillmore?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Lalonde?
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if we could possibly consider a language change to the word.
If you're going to change the language, it's an amendment.
I would like to propose an amendment,
Okay.
a small amendment first, to see how my colleagues would feel. If instead of to instruct, we would say to encourage.
we already voted on this amendment initially, but it's still in order to change, to put in effect a sub-amendment on the sub-amendment to encourage. Have you moved that? Are you moving that, Ms. Lalonde? She did.
Yes, I am.
Any debate on that point? Those in favor? Those opposed? Fails. So we're back to the sub-amendment of the amendment. No, we've done we've done the sub-amendment. We're just on your amendment.
Yes.
Yes, as amended. Okay.
Mr. Chair, out of respect to the witness, might it be prudent of us to excuse her if she
We
has?
might get back to her.
Yeah?
We might get back.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So we can carry on.
I do wish members had thought about their concern about the witness before we started this. Not that the chair mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. Anyways, we are at the point of no further debate on the sub-amendment. Am I correct? In which case, we are asking for a vote. Those in favor of the sub-amendment?
It's the amendment.
The amendment to the amendment.
No.
No. Yeah.
The amended motion. All those in favor, yes.
The motion is that the sub-amendment amended the amendment,
yes.
so now we're just on the amendment as amended.
Oh, amendment as amendment.
Yep.
Well, hang on.
No.
Not quite.
Yes.
Motion as amended.
No, hang on.
It's the amendment
The amendment
as amended by the sub-amendment.
But the sub-amendment passed.
Correct.
But that didn't mean that the amendment passed.
That's correct. So the vote is
So-
on the amendment.
That's my point. Okay, we're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll let the clerk call the call the vote, other than not necessarily call the vote. We can still do a hand vote.
No,
You want a recorded vote?
No, I just would like to know, once we vote on this particular amendment, we would be voting on the amendment that has been amended. Can we bring new amendment?
You can bring amendments all day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. We will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So there, I don't see any. I don't see anything on the floor. I'm calling for the vote on the sub-amendment.
No, the
The amendment
as
of the. The amendment of the motion. Yes. Those in favor. Ms. LaRouche. Yes. Okay. Those opposed. Okay. So the amendment of the motion passes. Now, the chair's got straightened out. Now the motion itself. Ms. Lalonde.
So I would like to bring an amendment, Mr. Speaker. And my rationale again goes back to say that, I had the pleasure of actually meeting with individuals from my community who are impacted by the strike. I did share with them that I would raise their concerns, and I felt quite confident as we had talked about it on the proposed motion of Mrs. Matterson. I thought it was genuine. I thought it was, serving what we're trying to do, which is having both sides returning to the table. I know that the minister did meet with both sides. And for me, the language would be important because as we determine negotiation, it is on the privy of, for sure, the government would give a mandate to go and negotiate at the table. I understand that. I am not disputing that. But I have somewhat of a situation in terms of how we're sort of suggesting the instruct word. And I say this generally speaking, negotiation comes because we have people come to the table. Both party has to be doing this in good faith. Both party wants to find resolution. And as I said to the people that I have the pleasure of representing as the MP of Orléans, I did say that I was completely in support of Mrs. Madison's motion, and that I believe that we need to go back to the table and negotiate in good faith. So my question would be, as I would reflect on the language that I think would still do what we're trying to do, which is, as a committee member, acknowledge our support, our true support for those men and women who have been on strike for many and too many days, realistically speaking. But at the same time, I want to see if we could find a way, and as I mentioned, again, if we could find a way to change the language from instruct to encourage. And I do believe that that's a way that we would preserve somewhat the rationale as to the going forward. So, Mr. Chair, with this thought, I just wanted to see if we could suspend for a few minutes again, just to reflect on how we could go forward.
Before I speak to the point of order, we've already voted on the first suggestion, so that's...
Your mic's not on.
That's not in order. And as to the... and then I can move to you. Okay. I've already made my point. Okay, so unless you have...
Okay, so then I will bring an amendment, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. So my amendment will be to say that I don't have my glasses. This is why it's being a challenging few minutes, and I apologize to my member. I would like to. I would say that I'm just trying to see, to encourage them to bargain in good faith and come to a fair resolution. So I just want to see where I would strike, and that's why I was asking for my little pause, just to make sure that I can see. And I'm sorry to my wonderful member here. I did forget my glasses at home, so everything in front of me is a little bit blurry. So are we can you just give me a second just to suspend so I can write my words so I can make sense here, Mr. Speaker, because I really don't see my sheets. And I apologize for that.
I won't suspend, but I will hold for 30 seconds while you write it out so that we all know what we're talking about. Okay. Okay. Let's move along here, Ms. Lalonde. Okay.
Yes. We're trying to find. Okay. See what she says.
Okay. So, and we would say, and to urge them to bargain in good faith and come to a fair resolution. And that would, as we go, non-public workers on strike, and we would replace urge them to bargain in good faith, which is in the wording of Ms. Madison, and come to a fair resolution, which is, I think, what we all aiming to do.
Oh, come to a fair resolution. Okay. The question is always, is that substantially different than the one that's just been voted on? My view is that it is, because you're not just changing a word, you're changing an entire phrasing, a couple of phrasings actually. So that is what's now before the committee. And so is there any debate on that? Ms. Madison?
Point of order.
Yes.
I would like it read back because it was a little disjointed as we went through it. If the clerk could please read
Okay. Legitimate
the
point.
sentence.
Okay.
Yep. So my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, Ms. Lalonde, is that in the last sentence, I'll start with the third line in English, solidarity with the UNDE's non-public fund workers on strike, and to urge them to bargain in good faith and come to a fair resolution.
No, no. So that